Hello there and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the community experts about their life journeys and learn with them. So today we have a conversation with Fransisco Arizmendi, experienced as creator, swimmer, marathon runner, and fitness junkie, producer and director of the I Make a Living podcast, musician, professional actor, and just inspiring community expert whom I immediately connected with after listening to on Pablo Gonzalez's B2B Community Builder show. So, hello, Francisco.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm good. Super happy to meet you. And the first question, so Mexico's soccer team during the World Cup, what is your impression?
Oh man, you're gonna start with that. That's just mean. It was terrible. I don't remember a World Cup. It's the first time in, I think it was 30 or something years that they didn't make the round of 16. And in Mexico, the big talk, soccer is like our second religion, right? Like
Yeah.
football is. And the big talk for years and years has always been the fifth game. We're obsessed with making it to the like round of 8. But this is the first time we didn't even make the fourth game, and it was disappointing. It was shocking. I was actually in Mexico during the World Cup, and after that game with Argentina where we lost, it was somber. The city was like somber. You would walk through the streets and you could see people's long faces, and yeah, it was a national disappointment to say the least.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And did they tell like football players, did they come back and like, oh, we're so sorry? So did they make any excuses for the people who were very, like praying for them, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as bad. I've heard and I've seen, in South America, players coming back and getting killed, like it's not
Wow,
that
no
extreme.
way.
There definitely was anger from the fans but it was very directed towards the coach, the head coach. People feel that he should have been fired way before the World Cup, but for some reason he didn't. And people think that his strategy, his way of his coaching style was not really suited for the team. People were really upset that during COVID he just went where he should have been doing some sort of prep work, or just, even though there were no games, you're still the coach.
Yeah.
He just took off and went to Argentina, where he's from, for like 2 years, and did nothing. And so the collective anger was directed towards the coach more than the players. And in fact, he immediately quit after the last game. He was like, by the way, I quit before you fire me. And people thought he wouldn't dare coming back to Mexico, because they were like, but he actually did. He came back to shock everyone. And yeah, no, there was a lot of anger, but mainly towards him. So now the big thing is like, who's going to coach the team? Who's going to take over? There's been some names floating around, some Mexican coaches. Right now, it looks like Marcelo Bielsa. He's like the Leeds United coach, and he's the forefront of candidates to take over the team. So we'll see.
Yeah, it will take just 4 years till the next World Cup. So
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, the next one is in Mexico. I mean, with the U.S. and Canada, it's like a 3-country World Cup, but you can't disappoint there. Like, there's a huge amount of expectation, and there will be riots in the street if they don't make it to at least the fourth game this time.
I can only imagine you should win the World Cup. Otherwise, like, no
don't
way.
don't even bother. Yeah.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So tell me about your parents. Who are they?
My parents. Yeah, I. Funny enough, both my parents are doctors. To make things more interesting, My dad was actually my mom's teacher in university, in med school. And rumor says that my mom would hide from him in the classroom, and that's how they fell in love and whatnot. But yeah, my dad was a psychiatrist, and my mom is a surgeon. And when my mom finished med school, she actually realized that her true passion, her calling, was to teach. So she went through all the 6 or whatever years of med school, and she actually never worked as a doctor. She became a teacher right away. She was doing part-time teaching while she was in school just to pay for school, and then she went full time, and she was a headmaster at a school for almost 40 years. She just retired a number of years ago. She still did medicine, but she did it as a kind of like a side gig, which is funny because you go to school to be a doctor, and she just did it as like, she would see people in her home, and I really liked, it kind of taught me a lot because she did it because she loved medicine, but she never charged people. So people would come to her house. She would she would do consultations and treat all of the neighborhood and their family, and she never charged people. That was a nice part. The annoying part is that at any given time in my house, there was always random people being treated for stuff, or knocks at our door at like 4 a.m. with like, my kid has like fever. What do I do? And mom would be like, take him to a hospital. Like, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. And I did lose my dad when I was young. So my dad died when I was about 17. But he was a director of a hospital in Mexico, and he was passionate about sports. So all of my sports, interests and why not come from my dad. He was big into running. He did marathons up until he was like 60 something. He trained. He liked soccer. He was a psychiatrist, but he also did sports medicine, so he went into that. So from very little age, we were always put in sports. So I did it all. I did soccer, swimming, taekwondo, tennis, you name it. Played every sport. My dad didn't care what we did as long as we were always doing some sort of sport. So that ran in our family. And funny again is like his true passion was football, American football, and that was a one sport we were not allowed to do. Very physical, very like, I guess he knew too much about the injuries, and he was like, you're not playing that.
Yeah.
But he was a huge Dallas Cowboy fan, and in the 90s, in the early 90s, the Dallas Cowboys made the Super Bowl twice in a row against the Buffalo Bills. And I remember my dad forcing us to watch the games, and I didn't like football. So just to annoy him, I would ask him like, okay, what's your team? And he was like, the Dallas Cowboys. I was like 6 or 7 at the time. I'm like, okay, and what's the other team? He's like, the Buffalo Bills. I'm like, that's my team. He's like, no. I'm like, yeah, that's my team. And ever since, I cheer for the Buffalo Bills. And fast forward 18 years later, I moved to Canada, to Toronto, which is like an hour away from Buffalo. So it's been amazing because now I'm very close to the Bills.
Do you participate every Buffalo Bills games?
I watched all the Buffalo Bill games. I won't watch any other football game because I don't really like football, but I really do like watching the Bills. It's more of a nostalgia thing. It's more like it reminds me of my dad. It kind of connects me with that part that he was so into. Like every Sunday he would sit to watch his Dallas Cowboys game. And, it was a time that I knew he would always ask me to come and join him. And so for me now, I it's kind of like in my brain. So it's every Sunday when they play, I sit down and I watch the game. Even though I wouldn't watch any other game. Like I was trying yesterday because the playoffs are happening now. And I was trying to watch another game. And after 5 minutes, I'm like, I don't care. I'm just gonna go do something else. But yeah, it's more of a nostalgia thing for me to do that.
And what sports did you do together with your dad?
When I was little, My dad was always more of the coach. So because he was a doctor and he liked sports medicine, whichever sport we were doing, he would always be the official, like, or the unofficial doctor of the team. So if I was playing soccer, he would be in the game, in the bench, next to the coach as the doctor. But it was like doctor slash coach slash dad. So it's a bit annoying for me because you want to be playing with your teammates and you're little, but he took it way too seriously. Like he was very competitive. So it was like the coach would scream and then my dad would scream and then like the coach would stop screaming, but my dad would keep screaming. Like it's like at some point, it's like, who's the actual coach of this?
Yeah.
But yeah, soccer. I did a lot of swimming, more like competitively in my teens, and he was part of that a lot. He was mainly there for all of my competitions. But yeah, we used to play a lot running. He did a lot of running. So he tried to put that in us from little. He ran marathons, and one of my fondest like dad memories would be like going to stand by the streets, where the marathon would pass, and just watching him cross and run. And he was fairly old for a normal dad. Like he had me when he was 40. So when I was in my like 10, 11, he was already 50 something. So he was an older dad doing all these really cool sports and in really good shape. So um, that really inspired me to have a certain lifestyle. So I've always tried to be in that like physical well-being and fitness and why not, because I always saw my dad, being like an old guy, and now I say an old guy, like I'm like getting closer and closer to that age. But I see that as as an inspiration for me to like, no matter how old you are, you can always find a way to stay in good shape, to take care of your body, to take care of your mind, and that's something I really take from him.
And did your parents ever want you to be a doctor?
No, no, not at all. Although I also don't think they wanted me to be an actor, so that's what I ended up like becoming. I never got any pressure from any of them to become a doctor. They, my dad would always say, whatever you want to be in life, it's cool with me as long as you always try your best to succeed, to be the best version of that. And he would always say, like, if you want to play marbles for a living, be the best marble player in the world. That's the only thing I ask, that you try. So it doesn't matter what you want to be. Just try your best to always become better. So yeah, no, I don't have the medical gene that they have because I don't like blood. I get really disgusted by it. Again, we saw a lot of like patients, and my dad was the guy that would, like, if there was an accident on the highway, he would stop on the side of the street and go, and he would always be very like, Francisco, come help me. And I'm like, why? I'm 7. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't want to see this. But he was always very involving us a lot in what he was doing. So I saw a lot of really horrible things that I'm like, I can be a doctor if I'm having these kind of reactions, right? Like, it's definitely not in me. And on the flip side, I always had an inclination for the arts, for music, for later in my life, acting. And that's something that was so foreign to pretty much everyone in my family. People ask me like, oh, who in your family plays music? I'm like, no one. Like, my mom's tone deaf. My dad was not really like into music at all. And like, no, my extended family, no one really was into that. So that's kind of like a unique thing for me.
How did you become an actor?
By accident, really, because I was a very shy kid. So I I did take music very early on. So I started playing piano when I was about 5. By 7, 8, 9, I was already playing recitals. I guess I was good. And I was really good at, like, playing the recitals, like, but I didn't like the attention, the stage. Like I was very, very introverted, very shy in that regard. And when I was 13 or so, there was a contest in my school. It was a poetry or like an oratory contest. And truth to be told, there was a girl in that contest that I really liked. And so I said, okay, I'm going to force myself to enter this contest just so that I can be closer to her, as you do when you're 13, because I didn't want to talk to her. I just wanted to be close to her. And I ended up winning the contest. And I guess the theater or the drama club teacher or director was part of the audience or one of the judges. So he approached me after this contest and he was like, hey, you're really comfortable, you're really good. Would you be interested in joining our drama club? And I was like, man, maybe, I don't know. He's like, yeah, can you sing? And I was like, no, definitely no. It's like, you know what, just come and check it out. And they were doing a production of a musical called Godspell, which is basically like a hippie version of like the life of Jesus. Like in this musical, Jesus comes back to the 70s to a bunch of hippies, and it's like a very, very 70s musical. But anyway, like I came in as like a, very, very like background, like support, like just to kind of go in it. And then the guy who was playing Jesus, which is the main character, obviously, his mom pulled him out of the program because he was doing bad in school or he had bad grades or something. So this director guy was like, hey, how would you like to be Jesus? I'm like, no way. I've never done any of this. Like, I've no idea. He's like, yeah, just try it out. And, fast forward, I took over the role. And that was my first incursion into acting and theater and everything. And it completely, it really changed my life because I discovered a part of me, a passion, of being on stage, of communicating through, music, through art, a lot of emotions. I've always been a very kind of like emotional, like, or connected with my emotional side. So this was a space where you could do that freely and kind of connect with people from an emotional level and kind of make them feel and things. And it was like a life-changing moment for me where I was like, this is what I want to do. This is something I really, really like and really enjoy. So from there on, I just got more and more involved. I started acting more professionally when I was in high school. I started being in theater productions back in Mexico, studying, film and TV. And then after high school, I decided I wanted to move abroad. So I had the opportunity to attend private school my whole life. So it was a English immersion school in Mexico. So I had the language knowledge, but I've never put it in practice. So, one of my dreams was to move to a country where English was the first language. I'm like, I know this language, but I've never used it. So I wanted to move to New York. Obviously, that was my first choice to go and study theater there. But there were a lot of restrictions. There were a lot of, issues. I couldn't make that happen. The cost was prohibitively expensive as an international student, and there were really no options for me to do any work while I was there. Like they were very strict in terms of, at the time they were very strict. Like you could attend school, and then basically the day you finish, they're like, here's your diploma and your plane ticket. Thank you for coming here. Bye. So I had a friend who lived in Toronto or had attended York University here in Toronto in Canada. And she found out that I was, searching for options. My next option was Spain because my family is from Spain originally. So I had the opportunity to move there and work and live. But then she told me, hey, you should check out Canada, Toronto. It's a really great program. The city's amazing. And I really didn't know much about Canada at the time. And I came to Canada in the middle of February when I was in grade 12 to check it out, to check out the winter, to check out, like, 'cause I've never lived or experienced harsh winter like in Toronto. And I ended up finding a great school here, and I moved to Canada, studied acting, and then spent probably 4 or 5 years in the industry working as an actor.
Do you still play?
Yes, I'm also a musician, so you can see the piano behind me.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
my guitar's over here, but yeah, I do play. I've been in a number of bands. I mainly do it now for me. Well, after life has moved on and I've grown, I've really come to take this part of my life to, it's kind of like my refuge, my, like, what I like doing on my own, like playing music, writing music, and I don't really share that a lot publicly. It's more now for me, but yeah, I still do it. I also do take the occasional acting gig whenever a commercial or something like that, just to keep it going. But one of the things I really love about my job, as a creative marketer, as a creative, person, is that it's really allowed me to kind of keep those juices flowing in a different way. And going back to that first time where I stood on stage and connected with people, I take that now in what I do with community and community work, and I find a very similar approach. What I really love about my job as a community manager is that ability to, create a space where people come in and they connect with each other, they learn from each other, they grow together, and seeing all that and being able to facilitate those spaces, those conversations, it really brings me back to that feeling of hey, like, this is really cool. I really enjoy doing this.
And you told that you write songs, compositions. So
Too.
what does music means for you?
Music is, it's a very, very important part of my life. To me, music is kind of like a connector to my soul, to everything that I feel like. I feel like sometimes the best way to express what you feel is not through words. For me, sometimes I can do that through music, and it really is. It's a channel for me to connect with my most, my deepest, like, emotions, with my deepest feelings. I think music is present in my life from the moment I wake up. I play music. I listen to music to the moment I go to bed. It's always there in my life as a constant. And yeah, and it's probably why I'm like a huge fan. When people think of musical theater, musicals, that's like, why do people sing? Like, what's the necessity? And like, it just seems like so unnecessary. But when you learn kind of like the ends of musical theater, the idea of it is like, we communicate with text, we communicate with words, but there comes a moment where words are no longer enough. So the next layer is music, it's to sing, it's to kind of take it to the next level. And then there's dancing, and there's like kind of like the big numbers, and what it tries to evoke is like, words are no longer enough. So music is kind of an extra tool to communicate. So I always have that like very ingrained in my head of how I like to see music. It's like, it's the next layer of a language that we have.
Yeah, music and dance is definitely two more languages that just can only help us to share our emotions, feelings, and but you told that you write music, but you never share it with other people. So do you share your feelings with other people?
Yes, I'm very open with my, I mean, in various contexts, right? Like, obviously in a professional life, work life, I'm very professional, but with my friends, with my partners, with my kid, I'm very connected with my emotions, and I have no issues communicating that or expressing those feelings. Um, yeah, I do consider myself a pretty um, emotionally available person. I'm able to express that a lot, and I've always been fascinated by human emotion, by human, like by feelings, by reactions, and going back to life, like a work setup. Like I think what makes my work different, or what I try to make about my work different, is like I like it. I always like to think about what is this piece of content going to, what's the emotion going to be, which is going to be received, like what's going to be the emotional connection between the audience and me, or the community and me, and creating those emotional connections, to me, is the most effective way of thinking as a marketer. Like when I think of marketing, to me, like I don't think of selling things. I think of building relationships between an audience and a product and a brand. And with my community, or the communities I've had the opportunity of running, I always like say that it's like this is for me an opportunity to create something valuable that people are going to appreciate, and that is the most effective way of selling or like positioning something, is when they actually connect with it and they see a value. So, and that requires the level of like understanding the human emotion of it, right?
What do you think is the best emotion to build relationships?
I think empathy and honesty, is our two front drivers. So when we are building relationships, I think empathy is the ability to see someone for who they are, where they are in their moment in their life, and not from your own perspective. Because when we add the lens of our opinions to somebody else's life or problems, it's hard to connect sometimes, because you have your own way of doing things, you have your own way of feeling, but everyone else is different. So to me, empathy is that ability of like hearing you and seeing you without judgment, without my own filters, and actually connect with you and find a relatability point between what you're telling me, what you're going through. And that kind of creates those like more organic or more truthful bonds between people.
And if we are talking about like sadness, happiness, anger, so what emotion is the most powerful for you?
Oh, from a creative standpoint, I think sadness, or angst, is very powerful. It's not something I like experiencing in my life, but what I've learned to do is to use those moments of sadness, of darkness in our lives, and use them as tools, or use them as catalysts for creativity. So if I'm writing stuff, I I hardly ever write things when I'm super happy, because you're enjoying life, you're like in a really good mood. But when you are in a sad or in a more like introspective mood, when things are not going well, that's when kind of your brain taps into more of those. So for me, at least, like more into those creative moments where like a song or words or things like that happen more organically. So yeah, I think as much as I don't like it, sadness and darkness can be very powerful tools as a creative, like a musician or as an artist.
Tell me the story of Santi losing his tooth in the middle of Target.
Yeah, so I took my son a couple months ago um, to Buffalo. He's really into dinosaurs. So my son, he's 6 now, and he's always and only been into two things in his life: trains and dinosaurs. And I hear and I see other kids, they go through phases of TV shows and space but for some reason Santi's always been really into trains and really into dinosaurs, and no doesn't really care about much more. So I took him to Buffalo because there was this Jurassic World show. It was like a huge live show with dinosaurs, and it was in a stadium, where the hockey stadium. So I took him to Buffalo for the day, and we did a bunch of things. I took him to the Buffalo Bills stadium, obviously. And then we went to Target just to buy some stuff for him, some clothes or why not, because we don't have Target in Canada. So whenever you go to the States, Target is wonderful. And he had told me he had a loose tooth, and we're like, okay, it's fine, don't worry about it. We did all the shopping, why not? And then I was paying, and we were on the till, and passing things through the register, and he wanted this like candy or something that like they have at the register. They have all this display candies. I'm like, no, and I was like, always thinking, as a parent, you always you don't want to say no just because no, like there's always like a reason why, just to like make it more like understandable for the kid, because if you just say no, that could easily turn into a tantrum or like a fight. So I'm like, no, because blah blah blah. So my first thought was he wanted, like, I think like a lollipop. I'm like, no, because your tooth's loose, and you can bite into it and he'll fall out. And it's like, okay. And then like I'm passing, the next thing I turn, he's like playing with his tooth, and he just like wanks it out of his thing. And then he's like, okay, my tooth is out. Can I get the lollipop? But he has now like blood dripping down his, and the door cat, like the cash register person, was like, her face she just went white, just like, what can I do? I'm like, it's okay, it's just the tooth. She got shocked. I guess she didn't catch what was going on. But it was really funny because he was committed to that lollipop. So he yanked his tooth out to get his lollipop.
So did you buy it?
Yeah, of course I had to buy it. He just lost the tooth. I would have been the worst at if I didn't buy it lollipop.
Totally. And what is his favorite dinosaur? Does he have one?
Yes, and I should know this, is the Indominus Rex. Don't ask me what that looks like. I just know that by name. He has a massive collection. Like I said, he only likes two things. So all of his toys are either dinosaurs or train pieces. When he was very, very little, I scored, and I didn't know this at the time, but on one of those like resale websites, I found this guy who was selling, they're called Brio. It's like a train set. They're wooden train set pieces, and you can build like train tracks. And he had this like bin of Brio pieces, and he just posted it was like $40 or something, very cheap. I'm like, oh, that's great. Little did I know that those Brio pieces are incredibly expensive, and over the years, I've been expanding that collection. I like to say that I've been investing in his college tuition in the shape of like Brio pieces, because now he has this like huge, massive collection of train pieces. And he forms sets that are this like go all through the house, and he has a big attic where he plays, and they just go all through it, and then his other collection is dinosaurs. So he has tons and tons of dinosaurs, little, big, massive, and he plays with them every single day. He's very imaginative. We have tried, his mom and I have tried really hard to really raise him in a way that technology is not part of his day to day, which is really hard in our days, because a lot of parents are now resorting to tablets or TV as an entertainment, understandably, because, and I have a lot of empathy towards parents because I am one, but I know that when I grew up, it was more common than one parent worked, the other parent stayed at home and raised the kids. Nowadays, that's not really possible, and especially in North America, where like both parents have to work, oftentimes long hours. So raising kids has become more challenging. But we really wanted to foster a kid and raise him in a way where technology was not part of his life. So he doesn't really watch TV. We rarely play him something on TV. He doesn't have a tablet. He doesn't have access. Like, he just recently discovered, now that he's in grade 1, Minecraft. And it was funny because he one day came as like, he wrote his letter to Santa Claus, and his mom showed it to me, and I'm going through it. I'm like, Minecraft? Like, what the heck? I'm like, have you been letting him play? He was like, he's never played. He doesn't know what Minecraft is, right? But probably some other kid at school, and it's like a big thing there. So we're now starting to kind of allow him to learn more about technology, because it's also something that he's going to have to learn. But we feel very happy because we see him now, and he's a very imaginative kid. He plays with toys. He goes to the park and climbs trees. And to me and to his mom, like, it feels more normal. It feels more like that's the way a kid should be, and allow him to do that. So he comes up with all sorts of games between his trains and his dinosaurs. He likes doing that a lot.
Are you a strict father?
I am a very, I wouldn't say strict, but I do incorporate discipline as part of his upbringing. So there are rules, there are certain things that I hope to pass on to him and learn from a very early age, like being respectful, being, mindful, sharing, being clean and tidy with his space, and those things that it's a fine line between being, strict and just disciplined. I find, like, I like to think of him more disciplined than me being strict, because I'm not I don't raise my voice with him. Like, I don't ever, the occasional time, like, I screamed at him, of course, but I try to always be very reasonable with him. Very different from my own upbringing, because I grew up in a different generation with my parents. Like, there was not a lot of dialogue opportunity. It was like, you do this or you face consequences, right? And then it was, you do it because I say so. Like, and I try to be a lot more reasonable and a lot more like going into explaining to him why, and just trying to make him understand things a little bit better. That said, I don't really let him stray into like being poorly behaved or being rude to people. Like, so I like to think I'm a balanced father, and that's my goal, at least, is to be a balance between being cool but also being a responsible parent and raising a child with manners and with a good set of values in him.
Once you shared a Christopher Moore's quote, children see magic because they look for it. Do you look sometimes for magic?
being a father has kind of brought back a lot of that simplicity of beauty. And after being a dad, I started realizing how much of that I've lost, or we lose when we grow up, is we stop valuing and we stop observing simple things that are so rich and so great, because we're busy, because we're working, because we have other priorities. But spending time with my son, often a lot in nature, and taking him for walks, and just seeing him enjoy the simplest, silliest things, and how he is able to turn that into something great, where one would just walk by and don't even think about it. Like he sees a tree that has cool branches to climb, and all of a sudden this tree is now like a station where and then this whole thing unfolds. And it's just incredible to see that, and just realize how much we don't see on a day-to-day basis, how much we just walk by and ignore. And in a day and age where we live so stressed, where we have so many worries, where we're always constantly thinking about so many things, a reminder to stop sometimes and just to look around you and appreciate the little things in life is so valuable. And we often say that kids teach us as much as or more than when we are able to teach them. And I do see that my son has taught me a lot of things that I've forgotten, or that I didn't think about, and just seeing him and his processing so pure and so innocent.
Yeah, we just had this conversation with Chris Catania, and he told that kids are little mirrors. So you just look at them and see yourself.
Yeah.
And what is the story behind your bicycle tattoo?
I don't think I've ever told this story publicly. It's not that meaningful. I got the tattoo in Portland, Oregon, which, if you are familiar with Portland, Oregon, it's a very like progressive city, where it's no surprising that I got a tattoo there. But I was actually attending a conference there called World Domination Summit. This was a great conference. I don't know if it exists anymore, but there's this guy called Chris Guillebeau, and he's an author. He has a number of books, and he put together this conference, which was a mix between like professional development, but also like a lot of fun. And he was from Portland, and he really wanted to showcase Portland at its best, and all the cool things and all the quirks about Portland. And so one of the days there was this activation where he invited some of the best tattoo artists in the city to do tattoos for charity. So you could book one of the best tattoo artists for like a very small rate. And all the money would go towards a local charity. So I got inspired, because another thing about Portland is like people bike a lot, and I bike a lot in Toronto as well, and I love bicycles. But the idea with like the meaning of the bike it's in my wrist, it's right here. And the idea of it to me is a reminder of movement, and how life is in constant movement. And sometimes we fall off our bike, and sometimes we have moments of dullness, but no matter what, we got to keep moving forward. And so every time I see this tattoo, is a reminder to keep moving forward. And I have it pointing towards the right, because here that's kind of like forward, that's kind of like the direction I see. And that's why it exists.
Yeah. Once on your Instagram account, you shared that found the secret bar in Seattle. It only took 3 scary alleys and a very savvy local friend together. So, did that bar worse passing through those scary alleys?
It was. I was in Seattle, and we met this guy who we invited him to a dinner, and it was like a customer dinner, but he got really drunk at this dinner, and everyone left, and it was just myself and another colleague, and we were ready to go home. But this guy wouldn't leave, and we were like, okay, we're just gonna go because we're tired. We just flew in from, I think we flew in from LA, and he was like, no, guys, how long are you going to be in Seattle for? And we're like, we're leaving tomorrow. We're just here for this dinner. We're going to Vancouver the next day. It's like, oh, no. You can't leave without experiencing the true Seattle nightlife. And we're like, doesn't think this is how the city is portrayed, but cool. He's like, I know this bar, but it's a secret bar, and you can only like access a bar if you know the word, and it changes every day, and I know a guy who knows the word, and like blah blah blah. So we're like, okay, fine, we'll entertain this idea. But he was really drunk, so it took him like, we left and we started walking. He's like, oh, I know exactly where it is, and he kept taking us through like alleyways, and he would still be like, oh no, it's not here. Oh, sorry. So we wandered like all these like dark alleys and like all these streets until eventually got to yet another alley, and then he knocks on what looked like the back entrance of a warehouse. It just did not look like the entrance to a bar. And funny enough, it was true. He gave the word, and they let us in, and it was the coolest speakeasy bar. It was this tiny space. I think probably hosted most 20 people, and it was this super cool cocktail bar where they make this incredible cocktails, because you basically have a bartender for yourself because it's so small. And yeah, we had a great time. He was really funny, but yeah, getting to it, we were like, at some point my friend and I are like, maybe we should just lose this guy. Like, we'll just like let him keep walking, and we'll just turn around and run, because he either has lost or he's gonna murder us tonight, and he's just like finding the right spot to kill us.
Oh, have you ever brought somebody to that bar later on?
No, I haven't been back to Seattle since then. I think, but yeah, next time I go, the thing is, I wouldn't even know where to start looking. Like a secret bar in Seattle, like I don't know how I would have to find this guy again and just like, yo, remember that one time? But yeah, if you're in Seattle and you know how to find this bar, please make a comment, because I would love to know.
How did the Queen influence your life?
The Queen, or the Queen, the band, right?
Yeah,
Queen, the band. Huge influence in me. Probably the band that I first became a huge fan of, and probably the biggest fan. I am the biggest fan of Queen. Two people in that band, obviously, like Freddie Mercury. We all know Freddie and his story and his extravagance. I was really inspired by him, but later in life, I originally was really drawn towards Brian May, who's the guitar player. You remember Queen, he's the guy with curly hair, because his story is really incredible. He is actually an astrophysicist who, had a passion for music, and he had a dad who was very supportive of his music, but also really pushed him to continue studying. And there's this like big story around how he built his guitar, which is his famous red special guitar, with his dad out of scrap pieces that they found, because they have no money, so they couldn't afford to buy a guitar, so they built one, and it turned out to be like now one of the legendary guitars out there. But at the time when I started listening to Queen and I was really into music, I remember my dad, being like, you can do this thing, but you can still pursue a career. And that was kind of like he would always use them. Like, look, if he became a rock star and an astrophysicist, like you can do it too. So he was kind of like my permission to dream of being a rock star, with the reality that I had two doctor parents that would have not let me just become a rock star and not go to school. And in fact, that was another, back to one of your questions, is like, did they ever expect me to be a doctor? And it's like, no, but the only rule that they did have was, aside from trying my best, was you have to go to university, like you have to study, whatever. And that was a big conflict, because when I was in high school, I was telling you, I was already acting professionally. I had all these offers to go more into, I had in Mexico, like a soap opera, like like a telenovela, and just
Yeah.
but my mom was like, no, you have to go to school, you have to study something. And that was my dad's, like, oh, he was always like, if you can be Brian May, you can be Freddie Mercury, but you have to go to school. So that was my permission to dreaming of being a rock star. And then Freddie, his ability to stand on a stage and really connect with an audience was later in life an inspiration for me, as a musician, as a performer. And I think he's probably the biggest frontman or showman that we've seen in our lifetime. He had the ability to connect with every single person, and the bigger the stage, the bigger the crowd, the more he would relish in it. And in interviews, he'd be like, I'm terrified of performing to 10 people, but put me in front of 50,000 and I'm in my element, right? And in a way, I connect with that. Like, I don't like the intimate, like one-on-one, like when it's performing or anything like that. But you put me in front of an audience, you give me a stage and a microphone, and I'm very happy. Like I'll take over it. But yeah, it's a weird thing, because I'm very comfortable in those environments.
You travel a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
what is your favorite city so far?
Ooh, um, New York has always been in my heart. I've been to New York way too many times. But to if I were to pick a city to move and live that I could today, I think I would move to Austin, Texas. I
Why
think
so?
Austin is a wonderful place that is very eclectic, and it's very unlike the rest of Texas. So if you ask an Austin person what's the worst thing about Austin, is they'll tell you that it's surrounded by Texas. Because it's a very different vibe. It's very progressive. It's very open-minded. It has incredible food. It's very close to Mexico, which is where I love living, and where I'm from. But it also has this really cool art scene. It has, City Lights Festival. It has the film festival. It has a lot of music. It has a lot of culture of music, and it's small enough that you don't feel crowded. But it has it's a very modern city, because Amazon's there, Tesla's moving there, Whole Foods is from there. So it's a very, very cool mix of a lot of things I really like in my life: technology, music, food, arts. So it's a really cool place. And obviously Mexico City is still a place that you have to experience once in your life. It's such an underrated place. Obviously, there's a lot about rep about Mexico with reason, but Mexico City truly is a fantastic place. It's so rich in history, so rich in culture. It's probably one of the best places in the world for food, and people don't know this about Mexico City, but some of the best restaurants in the world, like the best, like renowned chefs, like they all like have place in Mexico City. And the beauty of Mexico City is that you can go eat at a like Michelin star restaurant, and you can go eat at a taco stand on the side of the street, and you're still going to have an incredible experience. You're going to love both. It's going to be amazing. And wherever you turn around, there's food, there's museums, there's activities, there's places to be in bars, and it's just a wonderful place.
What do you feel when you are coming home from a long trip?
Uh, I really like being on the road. So I think a part of me feels like, okay, I get to rest, but the other half of me is always like already thinking about the next adventure, like the next trip. Um, because I really like it. Like I traveled for work heavily for almost 4 years before the pandemic, and people would always say, "Oh, you're gonna get tired of this. You're gonna do it for a year," and then because I was traveling 4 or 5 times a month. Like I'm like basically living out of a suitcase and traveling far distances, and I never did. Like every time I drive to the airport, I still feel excited. I don't mind it. I like traveling. I like exploring new cultures. So it's a mix between like I'm glad to be back, but at the same time, it's the excitement of like where's the next place gonna be.
Are you already planning a next trip on your way back home?
No, I always, yeah, I mean, unless it's for work, I think I let it sit and I kind of let it simmer for a bit before I start planning my next adventure. But um, yeah, there's so many places I want to see. Like there's always a list for sure.
What is the next place you plan to see?
This year, my big goal is Tokyo. That's been top of my list for a long time. So I really hope I was this close of to go before the pandemic. The pandemic hit, and then it kind of became a far distant thing. But now that things are back to normal and more settled into my new role at Superside, I really want to make Japan happen. Probably in the fall. I love to go in the fall to Japan.
That you will use this phrase, Watashi no namae Francisco desu. So, which means my name is Francisco. I just learned Japanese in school, and that's the only one thing I remember from that time, but still useful.
Nice.
And Francisco, I really wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions. Are you
Go
ready?
for it. Yes.
Swimming or biking?
Swimming.
Train or dinosaur?
Dinosaurs.
What are your favorite color and song?
Ooh. Color, teal. Song. It has to be a Queen song. There's just so many, but I love this one called "My Melancholy Blues." It's a Queen song.
If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Teleportation.
One more hard question. Who do you learn from in the community world? And name just one person.
Who do I name? Who do I learn from in the community world? There's this guy named Pat Flynn, and I know you're familiar with him, but I really like how he has built a fan base and a community around all the things he does. And he's a wonderful human being. I've had the chance to meet him a bunch of times, interviewed him, and I always love when people have a name and they're recognized and they're still so humble and so real. And Pat is just that. He's a great person.
Yeah. Name two people who I should definitely have this conversation with.
Ooh. You should have this conversation. Really bad with names, but the guy who's running community at Notion, his name is gonna escape from me.
I guess it's Ben. Yes.
Ben. Yes. Yeah. I know you've had it, but yeah, I had a chance to interview Ben, and I really like what he's doing with Notion and the community there. And who else would be a great person? You should have Pat. Go for it.
Sure. Is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
I think, I like how we are talking about, me and, my life outside of community. I think if I were to listen to this from someone else, and not that you should ask me, but, like probably the one question that I would ask related to community is like, what does community mean for me or for the person in their life? Like, what outside of the world, outside of like their work, why is community? What is their understanding of community, and if there's a relatability between community in life and community in work? Because I find, I've always been very drawn to communities, to that collectiveness of work, to belonging, and helping people feel that sense of belonging, and I translate that into what I do at my job. So it still has a connection or like an origin in my personal life.
Yeah, and you already answered it. I wanted like, okay, so what does it mean for you? But you kind of answered it. Do you have something to add to this?
No, thank you. It's been very I liked, you asked me things I hadn't thought about in a while, so I appreciate that. It's been really cool.
Yeah, and Francisco, thank you very much for reaching out to me, because I reached out to you like a long time ago, and then like this message like, hey Yuri, do you still want to do it? And I was like, sure, yes, let's go, let's do it. And yeah, thank you very much for that. And you're a great person, and like, I liked you from the moment you had the conversation with Pablo, and after our conversation, I like you even more. So thank you very much for being so open, and I really hope to meet you one day in person. I would love to. So
I hope so too.
we'll
Next
see
time I'm
how
in
it.
Warsaw, I'll come in my travels. Or if you're ever in this side of the world, just call me and we'll go for a drink.
Agree. Deal. So
Awesome.
thank you very much, and see you in the community world.